In the last life, Qin Yan died on the night I rejoiced for him. Before he was alive, I hated him for imprisoning me in Xinyuan and tearing up my marriage with the prince. I hate him even more for fabricating charges and harming my whole family. But it turns out that he was the one who saved my life and promised me to be white. He is also the one who endures humiliation and bears the burden and protects my whole people, and he died. Wang Quan Road was cold, and I set a fire for him. The fire was raging, and I lay down in his coffin. Qin Yan, you and I get married tonight. Although this coffin is small, it is enough to share a pillow. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn back 7 years ago. The handsome young man on the side of the bed was lazily lowering his eyes, staring at me coldly. When did Miss Su get enlightened about such things as throwing hugs and recommending pillows? After I was reborn, I saw the powerful boy again, but he had a short life. This year, in order to tarnish my reputation, Su Mingyan sent me to the bed of Qin Yan, the young son of Qin, who had a bad reputation. I touched Qin Yan's face with my fingertips. That face, it is no longer the cold and withered when you are in the coffin after death, it is no longer the pale and thin after poisoning. The young man in front of him has a beautiful appearance, like a dream. I pinched the thin flesh of the side of his face. His complexion was pale, and I didn't use any force at all, and the place was already red. Qin Yan's expression immediately changed. Miss Su, what do you mean by that? He grabbed my wrist back. His voice was deep, but his breath was slightly chaotic. I've been holding it for so long, it's not enough, and I still get started. I was a little hurt by him. So I had no choice but to withdraw my hand, but I was reluctant to withdraw my gaze. I looked at him fixedly. He was dressed in a wide moon-white robe, and his chest was wrinkled by me at some point. He caressed casually, seemingly calmly. It's so cold. It's so cold that he doesn't look like he was later. That's fine. After all, Qin Yan was only 17 years old in this year. He hadn't grown into the tyrannical madman who was so powerful in the world. It's still a little wolf calf who has never eaten meat. I slowly hooked the corners of my mouth, admiring the appearance of this traitor when he was young, and deliberately teasing him. Young Master Qin, I've already recommended myself for a pillow seat. Are I still afraid to start with you? Qin Yan's expression was slightly stiff, and there was a hint of surprise in his eyes when he looked at me. He didn't seem to believe that I, the most dignified and graceful concubine of the Taifu mansion in the eyes of the world, would say such provocative words. In fact, what is impossible? The appearance that outsiders saw was originally pretended by me, reliving a life. I can be regarded as a half-point lead, and I am not the only one who is good at disguise in this world. For example, he in front of him Qin Yan seemed to follow etiquette, and his body was as cold as the bright moon. But I knew that he was just trying to restrain his backbone. In his previous life, it only took him 3 years to climb to a high position, and his means were amazing. Qin Yan was born from a bad background, and he suffered a lot of white eyes since he was a child, and slowly developed a moody, paranoid and rebellious temperament. What he hated most in his life was those dogmas and rituals. I was imprisoned by him in the deep house for more than 300 days and nights. Every time he looked at me, his eyes were sickly and focused, like an insatiable glutton, always brewing to tear and gnaw and swallow me. That's who he really is. And this in front of you, oh, it's the same as my name as the first talented woman in the capital loaded. Qin Yan and I looked at each other for a long time. He was cold and gloomy. I hooked my lips and smiled. Spring breeze and rain, silent. After all, it was he who turned his face sideways first, and his voice reminded faintly. Miss Su has entered someone else's bureau, and if she doesn't leave at this time, it's too late. I smiled and looked around. I naturally remember this dirty game, from the hand of my sister Su Mingyan, who has pretended to be a little white rabbit for more than 10 years. This year, I will be married, my parents will be well, and my family will be prosperous. I am the eldest daughter of the Taifu mansion. My father carefully cultivated me. Poetry, painting, writing in ink, piano, chess, and shooting, and never fell behind. The world praises me for being gentle and talented, and I am gentle and gentle. Even the saint revealed that he wanted to marry me and the prince, but it was only a clear purpose. In my last life, I restrained my temperament and became a model for the noble daughters of the world step by step, just to be a crown princess who can't make mistakes in the future, but my obedient and caring sister-in-law, under the weak and humble appearance has ambitions higher than the sky. She fell in love with the position of the crown princess. She wanted to rob. Finally, Su Mingyan took the opportunity to come with me to congratulate old Madame Qin on her birthday. And she intoxicated me and sent me to the pillow of Qin Yan. Qin Yan came from a humble background and had a bad reputation. If I were in the same room with him, and outsiders would know about it, I would naturally get dirty, and yet Su Mingyan still looked down on me and Qin Yan in the end. Qin Yan has a backbone, and he hates being used the most, so in the last life, instead of touching me, he helped me. Now that I think about it, it turns out that Qin Yan has been protecting me since the beginning of this year. I have two options: break the situation and escape, and then teach Su Mingyan a lesson. After all, once this matter is publicized, it will involve the face of the family, or, if you plan it, you will plan it. And Su Mingyan will be punished. At that time, I was afraid of my family's honor and disgrace, so I chose the former. The consequence is that Su Mingyan has intensified his demonization, so this time, I raised my eyes and smiled at Qin Yan. Young Master Qin, since the people have already set up a bureau, why don't we have a cup of tea and wait for a while? There are some pests, it is better to pinch them to death on the spot. It is more quiet. Qin Yan listened, his eyes seemed to be scrutinizing, and his tone was a little lazy and tentative. Miss Su is not afraid that she will be dragged into the quagmire if she gets involved with me. I picked up the teacup on the table, and the corners of my lips twitched. Young Master Qin, save it. You won't drag me into any quagmire. I also thought at one point that he was going to trap me in a quagmire, but later I learned that what he gave me was the purest and gentlest pure land in the world. Qin Yan looked at me and suddenly stretched out his hand. He stopped me from getting ready for tea. Young Master Qin, I wondered, he replied lightly, don't drink this. Well, why? The tea is cold. I obediently put it down. I have a stomach problem, and I don't touch the food tea soup that is cold. After a moment of silence, suddenly, I jerked my head up at him. In the last life, I was drugged and couldn't wake up, and Qin Yan finally woke me up with a cold cup of tea. After waking me up, he drove me away, in a very fierce tone. But what about this life? This tea is still there. He didn't throw me, he didn't kill me, and he didn't rush to get me out. How did I wake up? I moved my body tentatively, only to find that the position on my waist seemed to hurt a little. After Qin Yan became a traitor in his last life, he became a hungry wolf who loved to gnaw meat and bones. But I mistook the pearl for a fish. I couldn't see his goodness. I felt that he was extremely wicked. I hated him blindly, and I refused to let him get my wish easily. He couldn't ask for it, and he didn't want to force me, so he would hold me by the waist and call me Meow Meow one by one, pretending to be like a calf, so that I could pity him. So, the familiar pain in my lower back, could it be? Did he wake me up? Doubts came to my mind, and I said tentatively, Young Master Qin, if you hit it so hard, it will hurt. If it was Qin Yan in the previous life, when he heard my words, he would have blushed and softly slowed down his tone, but at this time, the gloom in Qin Yan's eyes not only did not dissolve half a minute, but even laughed softly. When Miss Su Miao was drunk and asleep, she cried and laughed like a nightmare. As soon as I get closer, you hold me up. I wanted to break away, but Miss Su Miao hugged her tighter and cried and said, his tone paused slightly, my heart trembled slightly. What did you say? Qin Yan's voice was very deep, but there was a shallow arc of ridicule at the corner of his lips. Thou shalt not lie with me in thy life, but thou shalt surely share with me when thou die. You also said that Huangquan Road is cold. Don't let me go alone, you have to come and accompany me. I was speechless for a moment. His gaze turned to the teacup on the table. I wanted to wake up Miss Su with cold tea, but the more you talked, the more outrageous it became, and the tighter you hugged it, so I started it. Although the strength is heavy, it is also to let Miss Su get rid of the nightmare as soon as possible. I looked at him and pondered every word of his words, but I couldn't find a flaw. It turned out that he was not deliberately gentle. It was I who stumbled by mistake and disrupted the events of the previous life. In an instant, a huge disappointment hit my heart. The glimmer of light from the lattice hit the side of his face, covering him like a dream. When he spoke again, his tone was light and slow, with a faint detachment, which completely shattered my dream. Miss Su Miao's dream talk is very interesting, but I don't want to take Huangquan Road in a hurry, so I won't ask Miss Su Miao to accompany me. I nodded. Yes, everybody's dying, no one wants to die, but he was so sorry for his life. In the previous life, he did not live past the age of 25, I looked at him with red eyes and a gentle smile. Got it, young Master Qin helped me once today. And I will pray every day in the future for young Master Qin to live a long life and avoid disasters. Maybe I said it too sincerely, but it seemed incredible. Qin Yan looked at me fixedly, his gaze exploring. I didn't explain any more, but straightened my clothes and hair in a dignified manner, and waited for the arrival of my prey. I know, soon, Su Mingyan will pinch the hour and lead the prince to look for me. Sure enough, within half a moment, someone from Wuyang came and blocked the door of Qin Yan. The latch was not hidden, and they easily broke in. Outside the door, the first question, pretending to be puzzled, came from Su Mingyan's mouth. Sister, why did you sleep in young Master Qin's bedroom? Live another life. I look at Su Mingyan again. Although she was a concubine, due to the early death of her aunt, she was raised under my mother's knees since she was a child and grew up with me. My mother never treated her harshly. And as the eldest sister, I also took care of her everywhere. But I would never forget her whenever I had clothes and jewelry. But she seldom wears what we give her. She likes to wear plain white, lightly applied powder, wood for hairpins, and jade for rings. She is good at cooking tea, and always recites the poems of the tea saint when making tea. I don't envy the golden jade. I don't envy the white jade cup. Do not envy the province of the dynasty. Do not envy the twilight of Taiwan. I envy the water of the West River, and I once came down to Jingling City. I used to think that she was indifferent and indisputable, so she didn't like those flowery ayara, but it wasn't. She just understood the truth of showing weakness and pretending to be poor in front of others since she was a child. The more obedient and sensible she is, the more people love her. What's more, people should be pretty and filial. Su Mingyan is well versed in this. She thought that this would arouse the prince's desire to protect. She thought that the crown prince was really the most gentle and kind person in the world, as rumored. I smiled at Su Mingyan. What did you just say? She probably didn't expect me to be unflustered, so her expression stiffened for a moment. But she has been pretending for more than 10 years, and today's game is inevitable, and she naturally won't give up easily. Her expression changed from doubt to anger, and even her eyes were dyed red, as if she were grieving for me. Sister, you should go to the guest room to rest when you are drunk. How can you sleep in the bedroom of Prince Qin Yan? Syllable. I slapped her in the face. Half of her face was flushed, and I even had blood marks from my fingernails. She stared at me in disbelief. The crowd watching the excitement also fell silent. I rubbed my hands. Which I did. You see me sleeping in young Master Qin's place? Father and mother have always taught you and me that you and I need to be cautious in our words and deeds when we are guests outside. I didn't come to ask young Master Qin to borrow the chronicles of the Sichuan domain. But you hyped up in front of people that I was drunk, and when I found here, the exit was nonsense. Are you trying to ruin my eldest sister's reputation? Or do you want to disgrace the Taifu mansion? Have you been wronged by this slap? I'm in the open. In Su Mingyan's plan, I should have fallen asleep in this room and let her splash dirty water. Or, even if I wake up, I should be like in the previous life, for the sake of the family's face, endure it for a while, and not expose her in front of others, and put the sisters' rivalry on the surface. I put everything in order and sat here waiting for her. People are not blind. At this moment, in Qin Yan's room, the beds were neatly made. My clothes are also meticulous. The people gathered here are all from the high-ranking family. Who hasn't seen the dirty things in the deep house? If I mention it a little, they'll figure it out. I'm just going to say it on purpose, so that these people of the world can understand. They were all used as pawns by Su Mingyan. From now on, they could no longer believe a word from Su Mingyan. Sure enough, I glanced around, and when people realized that they were being used, their faces were very ugly. Su Mingyan slapped me, and hatred crossed his eyes, but in the next second, he became full of grievances, and I saw a pitiful look. It's a pity that no one will speak for her anymore. The people retreated and dispersed. The surroundings became quiet. Su Mingyan looked at the prince with red eyes. Your Highness, she wanted to talk. The prince did not answer, but came up to me and asked me, Meow meow, does your hand hurt? Su Mingyan looked at the prince in shock and bit his lip. She must have not expected that the prince had always been gentle and kind, and took good care of her, but she was beaten by me this time, and she cried so badly that the prince turned a blind eye. He only asked me if my hand hurt. I was separated from him. The Prince Rongyu is full of talent, like a spring dawn, elegant and dusty. He was wearing a purple dress today. And his handsome and gentle face was painted with mountain eyebrows and sea eyes. Everyone in the world says that Rongyu has a gentle temperament and will become a benevolent monarch in the future. In the last life, I was a childhood sweetheart with him. I bear the honor and disgrace of my family, and I have determined to be his crown princess, and I will be his queen in the future. I thought about seeing the great country and the prosperous world with him, but later, it all became a joke. Who would have thought that he, who was so gentle, would ask me if his hand hurt after beating someone? In the future, they will kill my brother, rob my whole family, and harm my Su family, and at this moment, the palms are red. Rongyu held my hand and gently rubbed it a few times. It's as if he feels sorry for me. It's ridiculous. Until now, I don't quite understand why the tenderness in his eyes can be so real. Rongyu's fingertips were slightly cool, like the first melting snow in a mountain stream. Unfortunately, I want a fire that warms me. I didn't rush to withdraw my hand, but raised my eyes and subconsciously looked at Qin Yan. I wondered, would he care? From beginning to end, Qin Yan sat there quietly without saying a word, but I could tell that Qin Yan's eyes were a little heavier than before, and there was a faint coldness of paranoia. Qin Yan was probably displeased. I was thinking about whether to say goodbye to Qin Yan at this time. There was another familiar figure at the gate of the courtyard. Sister, are you all right? Why did I hear a bunch of gossip as soon as I arrived at Qin's house? Someone is bullying you. The person who came was my brother, Su, ASU, who is still alive. As he spoke, he glared at Su Mingyan suspiciously. Obviously having heard about the previous incident, Su Mingyan bit his lip, a little afraid of Su, and turned his helpless gaze to Rongyu. Seeing this, Su sneered directly. Su Mingyan, what do you think the prince is doing? You cheated the eldest sister. Does the prince's brother still want to help you? Brother Crown Prince has always put my sister first, don't you know? Su Mingyan is still quibbling. I didn't mean to. Oh, whether you have a calculation or not, you know it in your own heart. After scolding Su Mingyan, Su turned his head and smiled at Rongyu again. Brother Prince, you are the most protective of your sister, am I right? Rongyu raised the corners of his lips. Well, ASU is right. Su smiled even more after hearing this, and raised his chin at me as if selling. He was dressed in a flaming red robe, with a flying headband, standing in the autumn wind, uninhibited, and did not hide the spirit of youth. I looked at my brother who was alive, and my throat choked a little. ASU, I'll talk about the rest when I get home. Su has always listened to me, and as soon as I spoke, he held his sword and nodded obediently. Well, sister, how long will you go? Mother told me to pick you up. Rongyu was also acting as before, and called me gently. Meow. There are a lot of things today, and you are tired. So I sent someone to send you home. I looked at Rongyu's gentle face. What I recall is that in his previous life, in order to bring down King Qin, he sent my younger brother Su to southern Xinjiang to investigate the evidence, and deliberately designed to leave my younger brother alone and buried in the belly of poisonous insects and snakes in southern Xinjiang. I'd love to ask him, at this moment, when he affectionately called my brother Aksu, did he have half a sincerity? Previous life, Rongyu used Su's bloody life to open the curtain on the collusion between King Qin and the southern Xinjiang kingdom. Rongyu naturally won. He took the ironclad evidence that Su gave him in exchange for his life, pretended to be sad and angry on the Golden Palace, and pointed his sword at King Qin. He deceived the whole world, and he deceived me. Actually, he put poisonous insects and poisonous snakes. The net of heaven and earth was set up by him. From the very beginning, he had planned to take Su's life as his paving stone, but ASU also grew up with him. Asu has been by his side since he was a child, revering him as if he were faith, and calling him the prince's brother. Asu practiced his sword hard in order to kill the enemy for him. Asu studied literature since he was a child, in order to govern the mountains and rivers for him. That is Asu, who is loyal to him and entrusts life and death to him. Did he use this method to abuse ASU's life? On the day of the news of ASU's death, I still didn't know the truth. I cried and begged Rongyu, begging him to take Aksu's body back, and not let him be buried alone in southern Xinjiang. At that time, Rongyu was like this, calling me warmly and saying to me, Meow, you're tired, I'll send you home first. I don't understand why Rongyu refuses to take back Asu's bones. In the end, Qin Yan found me. I found the place where your brother's body was buried. Take me. At that time, I was not familiar with Qin Yan. I didn't understand why he was helping me, but I didn't want to miss any chance, so I got on Qin Yan's horse, after traveling overnight. He finally arrived at the deserted grave where Aksu was buried, and finally asked someone to dig up the grave for an autopsy. At that time, I realized that it was no wonder that Rongyu refused to bring Asu's body back to the capital. The corpse contains evidence that he killed Asu's kung fu is good, and ordinary southern Xinjiang poisons can't harm him at all. The cause of his death was a soul-attracting incense. It was a poison that Rongyu specially used to control the dead. He actually used it on Asu's body. It's just that Rongyu doesn't know what he's thinking about ridiculously. As ruthless as he was, everyone was killed, but he didn't have the heart to burn Aksu's body, so much so, in the end, I found out all this. Fortunately, there is still time to start again. Asu is still alive. He was afraid that I would be wronged, so he came to take me home. Rongyu's position as the crown prince is not stable, and in order to win over our Taifu mansion, he will continue to pretend to be the gentle god and Buddha who has transformed the world. Meow meow. The hypocritical gods and Buddhas are calling me again. He took my hand. I frowned. It's strange that I was negligent for a while. My thoughts were flying, and I was distracted in front of Rongyu. Well, let's go. I withdrew my hand and replied lightly, at least for now. It is not appropriate to tear your face with His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Rongyu's palm was empty, and he looked at me a little distractedly, his eyes lonely. I turned my eyes sideways, and I couldn't see his injuries. However, just as I was about to turn away, there was a soft laugh in the room behind me, with a bit of ridicule. Miss Su, aren't you here to get the Chronicles of the Rivers? It's Qin Yan. He was silent for so long. So long that it seemed like he was about to be forgotten by everyone, and finally he opened his mouth. I paused. Looking back, I saw that the old window lattice was shining with wisps of light. Under the window lattice, Qin Yan was holding his chin and looking at me. His complexion was pale, as bright as the cold moon. His eyebrows are slightly raised, his eyes seem to have hooks, and he is beautiful and almost demonic. The Chronicles of the Rivers is in the attic of the inner room. The attic is so small that outsiders are not allowed to enter. Miss Su is afraid that she will have to go with me in person. Phew, what Chronicles of the Rivers? God knows that he knows and I know. That sentence was simply what I deliberately lied in front of people in order to clear the stigma that Su Mingyan planted on me. He was fine. Obviously he wanted to keep me for a while, but he refused to say it directly, in order to prevent me from going with the prince. He even took this as an excuse. That's it. I'm still afraid that he won't make it. I couldn't know what was in Qin Yan's closed attic. Isn't it just full of my portraits? Wolf calf, sick madman. The one who pretended to be cold and indifferent before barely looked like a person. I can't help it. I followed Qin Yan to the inner room. He's in front, I'm behind. The stairs leading to the attic are narrow and steep. I was under Su Mingyan's medicine before, and on the surface I seemed to be fine. But in fact, my steps were weak, and I only stepped on a few steps on the wooden ladder, and I almost stepped on the air. Originally, even if you step on the air, roll down, or even fall to your death, there is nothing to be afraid of. After all, before I died in my last life, I could sleep with Qin Yan in the churning sea of fire. What is this? But I looked at the tall and thin young figure in front of me, and suddenly felt that he was still too far away from me. I want to hug him. I want to be close to him, and so, when I got up the last staircase, I stepped on the air and pretended to exclaim. Qin Yan really turned around quickly and grabbed my wrist in time. I threw myself into his arms, wrapped my arms around his waist, and heard his heartbeat. Out of his sight, the corners of my lips went up, and I smiled triumphantly. Qin Yan's body was visibly stiff. Soon, he saw my clumsy acting skills, and a sickly chuckle overflowed from his thin lips. Miss Su meow. Hug it so tightly, isn't it dirty? This sounds familiar, he asked me once. In my last life, after Asu's death, he took the initiative to find me and said that he would take me to Asu's burial place. I was very poor at riding and could only ride with him. Hurried overnight, the autumn wind was whining, I shivered with cold, and Qin Yan threw his cloak to me. I was between men and women, and refused to wear his cloak, so he sneered. Miss Su meow thinks I'm dirty. That night, under the moonlight, he was obviously smiling, but his eyes were gloomy and cold. He was the son of a concubine born to the outer chamber of a lowly prostitute. The Qin family is a high-ranking family, and has gone through 4 dynasties, and has produced noble concubines and slaughtered assistants. and Qin Yan's biological mother was an Orin of Gulan courtyard, and she couldn't enter the door of the Qin family until she died. Many people in the Jingzhong clan scolded him for being a dirty seed behind his back, saying that he had defiled the lintel of the Qin family. Because of this, although Qin Yan was recognized, he was never loved by his father. His yard was remote and deserted, his doors are open to everyone. No one took Qin Yan seriously. He quietly gnawed at hatred in the shadows, and eventually grew into a sick madman in the last life. After he said this, I never dared to be hypocritical. I shut my mouth, tightened his cloak, and obediently shrunk into his arms. He tightened the reins and hugged me tightly. I was wrapped in his warmth, the sound of the wind and the hooves of horses whistling in my ears. My heartbeat was chaotic, but my body was no longer cold. In this life, he asked me again if I didn't think he was dirty. I pressed my lips to his ear, word by word. Qin Yan, you're not dirty, you're cleaner than anyone else. It's your father who is dirty. He dirties your mother's body, and he dirties your life. It's the fools who are dirty. Their brains have long been filled with water, and their filthy mouths are not worthy of mentioning your name. Qin Yan, this Qin mansion is not worthy of you. Is it okay to leave early? After a quiet silence audible from a falling pin, Qin Yan suddenly buried his head in my neck socket. His breath was warm, like flirting and joking. Heh, Miss Su Miao praised me so well. What should I do for Miss Su Miao? It's easy. I laugh. When I want to kill, you make my sword. When I want to save people, you come and make my medicine. When I want to marry, you will be my husband. Qin Yan stared at me directly. His pupils trembled slightly, and his phoenix eyes were extremely deep. Your sword, your medicine, your Lang. No matter how cold and silent Qin Yan was, he still couldn't hide his sickness. In those eyes, there was clearly a surge of delusional feelings. I simply pushed the attic door. Qin Yan, don't pretend. Haven't you been eyeing me for a long time? There's a room full of my portraits, am I right? There was a creak, and the door opened. I was dumbfounded. What about painting? Not a single portrait of me. In the afterglow of the setting sun, through the window lattice, the books are neatly arranged and lined up with cabinets. Huh. This year, haven't you painted yet? I couldn't help it, muttered, turned around slightly embarrassed, and looked towards Qin Yan. I saw that the pale and gloomy young man raised his eyebrows slightly, and his thin lips hooked and smiled. So Miss Su Miao wants me to paint for you, and she wants to fill this room. The misunderstanding is big. Qin Yan took down the book Chronicles of the Sichuan Domain from the high pavilion and handed it to me. I took it and turned to leave. Qin Yan suddenly grabbed me, held my face. The tails of his eyes were red, his eyes were morbid paranoia, and his voice was sultry and seductive. How did Miss Miao Miao guess my mind? I've painted Miao Miao all over this room, and Miao Miao is mine, luckily. I'll start drawing tomorrow. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. A young madman, but also a madman. Qin Yan said rebellious love words, and kept muttering my name between his lips and teeth. His voice grew hoarse and his tone grew softer. I lifted my face and saw that the boy's dark eyes were surging with abyssal desire. Qin Yan, you used to be really good at pretending. I put my lips to the side of his face, kissed and pecked, and quickly left. Qin Yan was stunned for a moment. Soon, the flush at the end of his eyes grew thicker and thicker. When he spoke again, his voice was so hoarse that he could not speak. Miss Miao Miao was reincarnated as a little raccoon slave, right, hooked people's hearts, but they are not responsible. He asked helplessly and aggrieved, humble and presumptuous, confused and restrained. I didn't smile, I just looked at him playfully. I never knew when Qin Yan had been eyeing me. Is he already treating me as his personal property at this moment? In that case, he should have set his sights on me much earlier. I thought about it carefully. In the years before I and Sue, I had only crossed paths with Qin Yan about twice. For the first time, it was a winter day. That year, it snowed. I took my maid out to enjoy the snow, and I wanted to find a secluded place, but I stumbled into Qin Yan by mistake. He was being beaten and scolded in the snow by several princes of the clan. I shouted in shock and rage. Those few people recognized my identity, and for the sake of the face of the Taifu mansion, they were finally willing to withdraw and disperse. Qin Yan's eyes were cold, and he always had a tense expression, stubbornly refusing to show weakness. It wasn't until the men had gone far away that he finally couldn't hold back and coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood. The blood was red, and it fell on the snow, which was shocking. I subconsciously helped him, took out a handkerchief for him to use, and told the maid Ah Chun to find someone to help. but Qin Yan only stumbled for a moment, and then stood back in the snow. Not necessarily, he lowered his eyes to the handkerchief stained with his blood in my hand. And a self-deprecating smile overflowed between his thin lips. Miss Su should stay away from people like me, so as not to dirty herself. He walked away, his long, thin back blending with the snow. That was the first time I remembered what he looked like, stubborn, gloomy, ruthless, lonely, like a dormant beast. I grew up with many sons and daughters of a family. Most of the family's interactions are based on profit. People look down on Qin Yan. And naturally they won't get close to him, this lowly prostitute, the hopeless son of the Qin family. I have a lot of titles, the eldest daughter of the Taifu mansion, the first talented woman in the capital, and the future crown princess. So, I've always been the one who was overshadowed by the stars, and Qin Yan has always been the one who has been isolated. There are only a few families in Beijing, and there are always times when they meet. Since that time, I have seen Qin Yan from afar a few times. He always sat quietly in an inconspicuous corner, looking faintly at the hustle and bustle in the distance, and occasionally a trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. I also had a moment of eye contact with him. I'll signal to him. He staggered his gaze coldly. Someone was mocking him behind his back. Said that his face was so seductive, like his Oiran mother, and at first glance it was a cheap embryo. I don't like it to hear, at this time. My title as the #1 talented woman in the capital can come in handy. I will look the most quiet and virtuous, smile without showing teeth, and politely remind those people. Talking about people's wrongs is really not the work of gentlemen and ladies. Be cautious and cautious. Instead of saying that people are short, it is better to sit quietly and think about yourself. Sometimes, when I get bored, I will laugh and lazily tell those people. I heard that the underworld is divided into 18 floors. The first layer is the hell of tongue pulling. Anyone who sows discord, speaks too much, slanders and harms, and lies and deceives others will be beaten into this layer after death. The imp would break the man's mouth, clamp the tongue with iron tongs, and pull it out alive, but instead of pulling it out at once, it stretches it out and drags it slowly. After speaking, my face did not change, and I pretended to shake my fan indifferently and drink tea. God knows how disgusted I am with their noise. God knows how tired I am from pretending to be a gentle lady every day. God knows. I was so annoyed that I wanted to pull out their tongues. This trick always works better than a gentle reminder. Every time I say this, there is a dead silence around me, and I can hear a pin dropping. Merely, no matter how effective the means are, there will be occasional surprises. That time, when others heard my talk about hell with their tongues, they all shut up. But there was a faint laugh behind me. I cautiously turned back. I actually saw Qin Yan. He came at some point, and was standing behind me, staring at me with deep eyes, as if smiling. There is nothing more embarrassing in the world than this. I was afraid that he would misunderstand, so I hurriedly explained, "Young Master Qin, I'm not talking about you behind my back, I'm just..." But Qin Yan didn't wait for me to finish speaking, so he opened and closed his thin lips and called my name, "Miss Su Miao." I'm a little dazed. Huh, he asked, if the hell of tongue pulling is the first layer, then what kind of hell is the 17th layer after that? I replied, the second layer is scissors hell, the third layer is iron tree hell, and the fourth layer is mirror hell. As I spoke, I realized something was wrong and quickly stopped. I am known as a talented woman in the capital, and I should read all the articles of sages, and there are hundreds of schools of thought. The theory of hell is what I have seen from my miscellaneous ambitions. It's okay to say it occasionally, but if you count it down, the content is too underworld, and it doesn't fit my identity very well. I was a little angry and secretly glared at him. I was secretly defending him before, and he wanted to trap me. Qin Yan hooked the corners of his lips. It would be nice to listen to Miss Su Miao tell the story of the next 18 floors one day. These are the two intersections between me and Qin Yan before I and Su. The first time, I bumped into him in the snow. The second time, he saw through the disguise in front of me. So, this wolf cub was already eyeing me at that time. When I came back to my senses from my memory, the sun was already setting in the west outside the window. I left Qin Yan's arms, holding the copy of Chronicles of the Sichuan domain he gave me, flipped through it casually, leaned against the door and smiled. Qin Yan, do you want to know what the fifth layer of hell is? He stared at me with lowered eyes, and as soon as he spoke, he finished with a teasing note. Why, Miss Miao is finally willing to speak, but I said, in the autumn hunting paddock next month, you and I will join forces, and if we can win Prince Romeo, I will tell you, this year's autumn hunt, there will be an assassination. Prince Romeo has made a meritorious contribution in saving the driver in this game, and after this incident, he has been deeply favored since then, but in fact, Romeo had already learned about the plans of the assassins in the enemy country. He deliberately concealed it and did not report it, just to win the merit of saving the driver, and my sister-in-law, Su Mingyan, was even more desperate. She actually took advantage of the chaos to push me under the assassin's knife on the way to avoid danger, intending to kill me. It was Qin Yan who took a knife for me, and then killed the assassin with his backhand, but there was poison on the knife. I still remember the blood-stained appearance of his robe. In his previous life, thanks to this knife, Qin Yan fell ill, so much so that later, even if he was a very popular minister and searched for all the treasures in the world, his life would not be continued after all. In this life dash, I want Su Mingyan and Prince Romeo to repay the debt of this knife together. Merely, I forgot that Qin Yan, a madman, has always been greedy. He leaned close to me and smiled. Meow meow, not enough. If I win him, you must tell me it on the night of the cave on the wedding bed. The sound of Qin Yan's grinding set off a heat wave in my ears. I smiled and promised him, okay, listen to you, as I was going down the escalator with my books. I heard Qin Yan's voice coming from behind. I suddenly believe in Miss Meow Meow's dreams. Miss Meow Meow suddenly changed her sex, and treated me so well. Is it because she had some regrets in that nightmare? I looked back at him, and a lot of sadness turned into a sentence. Yes, I have a lot of regrets in my dreams. I saw Qin Yan leaning lazily against the door, smiling bewilderingly. It didn't seem like a good dream. However, I have dreamed of Meow Meow 1,000 times. And Meow Meow has only dreamed me once. In my opinion, it is better to abandon your worries, eat obediently, sleep well, and dream of me a few more times. Maybe next time, it'll be a good dream. My nose was sour, and I couldn't help but nod my head in agreement. I knew that he had been looking at me, but I did not dare to look at his burning eyes again, so I hurried over and hurried away. I'm afraid that if I stay any longer, I'll cry in front of him. In his last life, he also said a lot of love words. It's just that I never believed in him, and naturally I rarely responded to him. I've seen him splattered with blood when he kills. I have also seen him cut off people's limbs with an expressionless face, soaked them in a wine vat, and inflicted capital punishment. Therefore, his love words, to me at the time, sounded more like crazy words, especially when I learned about his means of climbing to a high position. Qin Yan was bullied and abused when he was young, and he suffered many injuries. In order to keep his light up, he deliberately withheld it, but he has actually secretly studied literature, practiced swords, and attracted talents since he was a child. In secret, he disguised various completely different identities, specializing in doing business with the powerful people in the capital to collect money. A boy who seems to be as humble as mud, in an unknown place. He has already made a lot of money, piling up gold and jade, everything. Just one chance to rise to the top. Opportunities are always available, but the rest of his life was ruined by me. In the assassination of the autumn hunt, he may have saved me by chance. Who knew that the knife was not eye-catching, but the poison was deadly. And in just a few years, he was sent to see the king of Hades. He really lost a lot of money. In the first few years, he was still able to rely on medicine to sustain himself, pretending to be fine, and wantonly manipulating his authority in the court. No one saw his flaws, and I was taken away by Qin Yan in the year when the Taifu mansion was defeated and was punished and confiscated into a lowly nationality. At that time, like most people, I didn't know that it was actually the last year of Qin Yan's life. I was imprisoned by him in the deep garden, and I learned his secret when I heard the irrepressible cough coming from his room, smelled the lingering medicine in his yard, and saw the dirty clothes he had no time to change after vomiting blood. He didn't want to hide it from me, and even learned to report the illness. I'm dying, and Meow Meow still refuses to say a few nice words to coax me. It's so ruthless. You like the prince so much. Humph, he's not a good thing. I heard that Chongshi can continue his life, or Meow Meow, give me a try. If you don't agree, forget it. Don't stare at me with that knife-like look. Can I eat people in this mansion? Are you in such a hurry to leave? When I'm dead, can I let you go? In fact, the prince and I are at most childhood sweethearts, and I can't talk about liking or loving. What's more, from the moment I learned that it was the crown prince who killed my brother, I only hated him. Qin Yan would always say a few words to the prince when he was idle, and he observed my expression while being sour. I don't believe that Qinyan really fell in love with me. I guess he was probably unwilling. Unwilling to let his years of planning be ruined at the moment he saved me. That's why he imprisoned me in Xinyuan and asked me to accompany him and serve him to satisfy his paranoid desires. The most speechless and choked is. I was raised in a deep boudoir since I was a child, and before the defeat of the Taifu mansion, I didn't even mention the slightest heavy object, but he insisted on teaching me how to practice swords. The sword was so heavy that I held it for a while. And my hands were sore, and I threw it on the ground in anger and refused to practice. Qinyan rarely made a gloomy face in front of me. You are too short of a dagger, and you are too heavy of a sword. You don't think you can lose the hidden weapon, and you don't think your arm hurts when you shoot an arrow. Miao Miao's hands are really precious. What are you willing to teach? I retorted. What do I learn to do? Like you, do you kill people at every turn? He laughed, about angry, because after he laughed twice, his face suddenly turned pale, and he frowned and coughed heavily, and vomited a mouthful of blood. I thought he was going to give up, but after he recovered, he indifferently wiped the bloodline from his lips, asked me to continue, and threatened me with a smile. If Miao Miao still can't learn to pick leaves and fly flowers today, just wait for me to bathe, okay? I scolded him in my heart for being a madman, but what he said always had a miraculous effect. In order not to wait for him to bathe and change clothes. Under Qinghuan, I learned a lot of things. It's just that gradually, I watched Qinyan change from a gorgeous son to a dying and struggling trapped beast. His hands grew weaker and weaker, he couldn't hold his sword anymore. And he couldn't hold his bow anymore. Finally it was my turn to laugh at him. Thou hast done evil for treachery, and even if thou art in a high position, what is the presumption of living? When you die, no one in the world will cry for you, they will only cheer. Qinyan stared at me and asked rhetorically, you won't cry? I don't even want to think. No, it won't. He lost his mind for a moment, and then slowly sneered. Well, that's really boring, I said. Then why are you still alive? It's better to break the medicine stone and die. He was not angry when he was cursed by me, but his gloomy face was full of helplessness. Little raccoon slave without conscience, if I die, who will protect you? I've been teaching you for a long time, but you won't even kill a chicken. How dare I die if I don't kill all those who want to harm you? Usually, he likes to call me Miao Miao. He said the name was like a cat, so, when he was not very happy occasionally, he called me a little raccoon slave. By the day Qinyan was finally willing to let me go, he was already sick and withered. He even struggled to speak, but his eyes were still ruthless. When I die, you shall no longer complain against me or hate me, otherwise, I will turn into a ghost, and I will meet your spring dreams every night, entangled with your pleasures, and disturb you. In the middle of speaking, he suddenly paused again. After all, he smiled bitterly and turned red helplessly. That's it. Don't worry, there are no ghosts in this world. There will be no more wicked people like me who live to make you hate. Later, I understood. Qinyan is a person who does not respect gods and Buddhas, and has no meaning for good and evil, but he has his own way. He clothed himself in the skin of Yama in order to step into hell. In troubled times, there is too much power. He didn't like it, so he killed to stop killing, swept away the traitors with the way of traitors, and fought with those greedy and disgusting souls. None of the people he killed were good, it's all the evil spirits he pulled out. Those demons have harmed me and others. It's just that they are all dressed as hypocrites. Until the end, he was pointed out by Qianfu, and he just smiled coldly. It didn't matter anyway. He has been used to scolding since he was a child. He's not a good guy anyway. When I ran to rejoice for Qinyan, it was too late. He lay on the sickbed and couldn't wake up until he breathed, and he couldn't see me dressing his wedding dress. I kissed his stiff lips and cried and said sorry to him countless times. That moment, I wish there were ghosts in the world, and ghosts would come to me. On the way home, my mind wandered. Su called me back to my senses. Eldest sister, that dirty seed of the Qin family didn't bully you, did he? He doesn't have a good reputation in Beijing. Brother Prince doesn't seem to like you to be with that dirty seed of the Qin family, so it's better for my sister to be scruples. I looked at Su, and I especially wanted to tell him in his last life, he died at the hands of the prince's brother, whom he believed in the most, and the one who ran all the way to collect the corpse for him was the Qin family's dirty seed that he didn't look down on. Su saw that I looked displeased. Su finally restrained his tone and looked at me cautiously. Sister, aren't you happy? I led the rhetorical question, if in the future, I and the prince will become enemies. Ah Su, who do you choose? Su was stunned. How could my sister have an enmity with the prince? I lifted the curtain and watched the bustling flow of people outside the carriage window. The palace is dangerous, and the East Palace is even more turbulent. It's a place that eats people. Your prince's brother, who has been eaten. Su looked at me meaningfully. Doesn't my sister know anything and doesn't want to marry the prince's brother? Daddy also said that when the Mid-Autumn Festival banquet is held next month, the emperor will make a decree for you to marry. I sneered, rest assured. This will not fall on me again. The hunt and assassination took place before the Mid-Autumn Festival. In the last life, it was Qin Yan who used all means to break down my relationship with the prince. This time, I'll take it personally. After returning to the Taifu mansion, the maid told me that Su Mingyan had been punished by his father to kneel in the ancestral hall. I heard that she was also beaten with a hand, and she was not allowed to eat for 3 days, and she was only allowed to drink tea. Su Mingyan originally returned home early, preparing to seize the opportunity and play a villain to Su first. It's a pity that since I dare to stay in the Qin mansion, I have naturally made sufficient preparations. Although I haven't returned home, the message has already reached the ears of my parents through Su's little girl. Even Su Mingyan excused himself and bit me back. I asked the little guy to learn it to them in advance. I really know Su Mingyan's skills too well. Therefore, after Su Mingyan returned to the mansion, after pretending to be innocent and pretending to be weak and crying and quibbling, my father not only did not forgive, but punished her more heavily. My mother heard that I was drugged by Su Mingyan. For fear that I would hurt my body, she personally stared at me and drank up the tonic soup, and sent all the maids away, and when there was no one in the house, she hugged me with red eyes and scolded bitterly. I treat that girl with all my heart. Who would have thought that she would raise a white-eyed wolf? What is the reputation of the young son of the Qin family? How dare she drug you and shove you to the side of his bed, in case it? The more my mother talked, the more excited she became. I was afraid that she would open her mouth to scold Qin Yan in the next sentence, so I hurriedly calmed down and said a few good words thanks to Qin Yan's help, and after my mother heard it, the focus fell on Dash. Then Qin Yan is also strange. Don't outsiders say that he is a prodigal dirty seed? How can he help you? I laughed softly. Therefore, hearing is false, and seeing is believing. Merely, the medicine Su Mingyan gave me was not too strong, but it had enough stamina. Qin Yan taught me the method of suppressing the strong medicine in my body in my previous life, but I am not good at learning the arts. Although I was fine that day, I had several burns from the next day, in a daze. I couldn't tell whether I was awake or asleep, whether it was a past life or a present life. Suddenly, I heard a lot of voices. A doctor came to check my pulse. There is a father's sigh. There was the cry of my mother shedding tears for me. Someone else took my hand by my bedside and called me by name as if gently. It's Prince Rongyu, he's come to see me. As soon as I heard his voice, I recalled many images. I saw the body of Asu's tragic death. I saw my mother become stupid after learning of Asu's death. I saw my elderly father kneeling in front of Rongyu, begging his subordinates to show mercy and at least save my mother and my mother's lives. In his previous life, Rongyu relied on the support of my Su family to eliminate most of his opponents. In the end, I thought that I was a master of Sumon's merits. He took advantage of the emperor's serious illness to seize power in the name of the crown prince. At that time, Qin Yan was already the youngest shofu in Jiang state. It's just that he doesn't go to court for 3 days. And he seems to be very lazy. Many people scolded him for despising the crown prince and disrespecting the imperial power. In fact, those people were right. He did despise the prince, but that wasn't the reason why he didn't go to court. It's just that he is dying and the number of poison attacks is becoming more and more frequent, so he closes his house to recuperate. The prince's prestige grew, but Qin Yan showed up less and less. He gradually stopped taking Qin Yan in his eyes. After the crown prince took charge of the country, the first thing he did was to pull out our Su clan. The birds are all gone, the good bough is hidden, the cunning rabbit is dead, and the lackeys are cooked. He ransacked my home, cast me on pariah. I stood outside the gate of Gulan courtyard, forced by the old bastard to sing glamorous lyrics. The pickled men in Gulan courtyard were laughing at me. Laugh at me from the front end of what is high, today is not reduced to a floating flower. Laugh at what kind of price I, the first talented woman in the capital, will be sold for on the first night. In the end, Qin finally woke up from his coma, learned the news, and Pegasus came. He was in such a hurry that his lips were pale. And even between his breaths, there was a faint smell of blood. I'm late, wonderful, his voice trembled, and his eyes were filled with intense affection and suppressed rage. It's just that halfway through, Qin suddenly paused. When he spoke again, he had already changed into the usual appearance of a traitor, with a playful and cold expression. Miss Meow Meow probably likes gentle, courteous men. I really don't, but you should see it now, right, Prince? He's not even a thing. You might as well follow me. As Qin spoke, he pulled me into his arms fiercely, put on warm clothes, and put on a hat. He drew his sword on the spot and killed the old bastard who forced me to sing a beautiful song. I also pulled out the tongues of the men who laughed at my lowliness, and gouged out their eyes. By the way, blood was pouring all over the ground. He's so arrogant, but people only dared to curse him behind his back, and this powerful minister and traitor could not die well. No one dared to stop his sword. In the end, he carried me away in a flamboyant manner. The picture of memory is chaotic, but the voice of Prince Rongyu came to my ears again. Meow meow, wonderful, wonderful hell. When Qin called me meow meow, the tail note was hooked, and even the air sound seemed to be tempted, but when the prince called me, he only made me sick to my stomach. Hatred held me open my eyes. When Rongyu saw me wake up, the worry on his face didn't seem to be fake, and the strength of his grip on my hand also increased a little. Meow meow. Are you better? I pulled my hand back and sweated profusely. Your Highness, please stay away. I endured it so that I didn't curse the word get out. Rongyu looked at me with complicated eyes, and his expression stiffened slightly. Meow meow. What do you mean? I'm patient, so I'm sorry. I have a stomach problem, and I am often nauseous during my illness, and it will not be good if I vomit on His Highness. Rongyu was silent, and after a moment, he gently scolded. What do you mean? How can Lone dislike you? With that, he stretched out his hand, as if distressed, and wanted to caress my hair. I turned my head away and avoided silently. But I hate you. Rongyu's hand paused awkwardly halfway, and his eyes were slightly gloomy. I glanced around the room, recognized the things he had given me, and pointed them one by one, pretending not to know. Chunner, who ordered that black incense? And those pastries, throw them out. This was brought by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Chunner was a little embarrassed. I simply vomited a few times. The smell of this room is mixed, and I really choke on my appetite. No matter how good Rongyu is at pretending to be gentle, she can't help my series of dislikes. His face suddenly deteriorated, and he smiled without a smile. It seems that the lonely thing is not pleasing to Meow Meow. Then throw it away. But it's not enough to lose something. The most disgusting thing about me is him. So, I glanced at Rongyu lightly, and quickly covered my mouth, and scored twice. Gun, Rongyu is the Prince of the East Palace. How can he ever be treated like this? He couldn't even pretend to have a trace of laugh lines, and only dropped a sentence coldly. Since Meow Meow is not well, then come back another day. Looking at Rongyu's back as he walked away, I breathed a sigh of relief, and ordered the maids to go out and close the door. Now, my ears are completely clean. I touched the extra jade bracelet on my wrist. Come out, Qin. I know you're there. The jade bracelet was familiar. Qin had put it on for me in his previous life, and I was not allowed to take it off. It was the only relic his mother had left him. He had taken it as his fate, but in the end he gave it to me. It's just that I didn't know how to cherish it at that time, and I accidentally broke it. Qin stared at those fragments for a long time. One by one, he leaned over to pick it up, tried to put it together, and finally smiled palely. You don't like what I send? Well, when I die, doesn't Meow Meow want to keep even one of my things? Blame me. I don't know the blessing in the blessing, and I mistake the pearl for the fish. Now, this bracelet is once again worn by him back on my wrist, 7 years earlier than the previous one. I know he's coming. It's hidden somewhere in the shadows. I can even imagine his playful and disdainful expression when he watched the play with a pair of cold phoenix eyes. Sure enough, a familiar figure stepped out of the shadows. I was picked up by a pair of hands. Qin stared at me with those undisguised possessive phoenix eyes. I have no choice. Qin, let me go. You are too presumptuous. This is my boudoir. He is like a beast that has been hungry for days, but has not yet been satisfied. When Miss Meow Meow slept on my bed a few days ago, she hugged me and cried and laughed, which is much more presumptuous than this. I'm speechless. He cautiously kissed me in the eye before reluctantly putting me back on the bed. Then, he stretched out his fingertips again, hooked the jade bracelet on my wrist, and hooked my hand as well, in a casual tone. It has been lit up, and it cures nausea. He's afraid I'll take off the bracelet. Nonsense. Also ridiculed Prince Romeo, by the way. Sure enough, he had been hiding in the shadows from just now. I know he's pretending. No one knows better than me how much he values this bracelet, so he said. Really, then I'll have to wear it properly, but I can't bump it. After he was slightly stunned, he breathed a sigh of relief, and as if he was pleased, the corners of his lips rose. Meow meow, open your mouth, huh, in a drowsy state. He shoved a pill into my mouth. The moment he entered the mouth, a bitter smell rushed straight to the Tian Ling guy. I subconsciously wanted to throw it up. As a result, Qin Yan seemed to expect me to be like this, and his thin lips covered lightly. Directly sealing my lips, I froze, and I had to swallow the medicine obediently, remembering that I was still sick and my face was flushed. He let go of me unsatisfied. When you're done, go on. I panted and fell on his chest, angry with the sick wolf. Young Master Qin, this is trying to treat himself as medicine and feed it to me. He chuckled. Meow meow really knows my thoughts. That's it. After taking his medicine, I became drowsy in the fog. The back of my hand has a strange touch. I gently lifted my eyelids. I saw that Qin Yan was obsessively playing with my fingers, and when he was playing, he actually bit me gently. The prince and I have both held Meow Meow's hand. Which one do you prefer? As soon as I saw his eyes, I knew that this madman was about to lose his restraint and was jealous. I glanced at him lazily. Qin Yan, don't always find your own anger. Do you think your lifespan is not enough? This madman is paranoid and will not hesitate to do anything. As a teenager, he was humiliated, gritted his teeth and swallowed blood, and became ill for many years. When practicing, he pursued the ultimate again, completely ignoring the load on his body's internal organs, and suffered countless secret injuries. His lifespan is no longer as good as that of ordinary people. Later, the gold, silver, and power were all exchanged for his life. In his previous life, he was poisoned to save me. And he ended all this early. In this life, I want him to live as long as possible. Qin Yan was stunned. He didn't expect that I even knew such a secret as him. His phoenix eyes narrowed slightly, and his tone was raised. Miss Meow's skills are really great. Did you secretly search my family? I lazily raised my hand to touch his face, and pretended to laugh. What, you're afraid of me? His eyes were dark, and his smile was slightly cold. Afraid of you? Scold. I'm afraid that after you know it, I will think that my life is short and I won't get married, right? TSK. The wolf calf is pretending to be aggrieved again. Shut up. What do you say is short? I couldn't hear this, so I glanced at him fiercely. Since the prince made you unhappy, kill it sooner. I don't know when Qin Yan left. When I woke up after another night's sleep, the fever had subsided and I was in good health. Qin Yan's medicine is really good, and in the few days when I was asleep, the news of Su Mingyan's intention to frame me in the Qin mansion had already spread all over Kyoto. Needless to say, there is naturally Qin Yan's handwriting in this. That madman has always been retribution. In his previous life, he couldn't bear it because Su Mingyan was my sister-in-law. This time, I probably saw that I didn't deal with Su Mingyan, so I had no scruples. Su Mingyan knelt weakly in the ancestral hall. By the time she saw the light of day again, the sky had already changed outside. She was ordered by her father to apologize to me. After being punished for a few days, she was so weak that she seemed to fall down as soon as the wind blew, and her face was white, but when she saw me, her eyes were as cold as a poisonous snake. Su Miao, you already knew my plan, and deliberately waited in Qin Yan's room to trap me backhanded. Interesting, she didn't pretend. It seems that during the time she knelt in the ancestral hall, she pondered a lot of things. I played with the codon on my fingernails. Su Mingyan, you tried your best to harm me. Didn't you just want to hook up with Prince Romeo? Shall I give it to you? Su Mingyan probably didn't expect me to say such a thing, so he was stunned directly. When she spoke again, she changed her previous attitude. Sister, what did you say? It turned out that I had to give her the crown prince before she would call me sister. No wonder in the last life, Su Mingyan and I were cold for so long. But after I broke with the prince because of Su's death, he ran to my room after a long time and called me the eldest sister in a fake voice. And when the Su family was defeated and suffered, she was the only one who was unharmed and spotless. She stood in the middle of the house, condescending, and scolded me for being stupid in a rampant tone. She said that I was stupid enough to guard against it. and I didn't prevent her from sneaking into my father's study to put those false letters. My father, and her father, Taifu's mansion is also her home. I really didn't expect that she would put all her relatives into it in order to please the prince. I asked her why, but she laughed maniacally. What do you mean by me trying to curry favor with the prince? Heh, I'm just going to borrow the prince's hand and destroy this Taifu mansion. Do you remember how my aunt died? She was forgotten by you in the Zhuangzi, sick and died. But you won't even give her a tablet. I hate Daddy, I hate you. And I hate your mother even more. I want you to suffer so much that you will not turn over. By the way, do you know how your mother is crazy? I gave her medicine for several years, and I was very careful, just increasing the dosage little by little, until Susu died, and I decided that it was time to give her a good time. It's good to be crazy. My aunt was crazy before she died. She was crazy to call her father's name, call your mother's name, and ask you to go to the funeral. That's when I really got to know her. It turned out that my mother and I were not worthy of being a human being for the sake of blood, and the cousin who had tolerated it many times was unworthy of being a human being, Su Mingyan's biological mother. Aunt Lu was originally a greedy person. She was jealous of my mother's position as the head of the lady, and poisoned my mother during her illness, almost killing my mother. Although my father took a concubine, he was quite able to carry it. After he found out the truth, he understood that a woman like Aunt Lu could no longer stay, so he scolded her with a cane and sent her to Zhuangzi. The winter of that year, my mother's fortune is great, and she came over. But Aunt Lu first went crazy and then fell ill, and finally died there. Since then, my mother has raised Su Mingyan under her knees, taught her wholeheartedly, and fulfilled her responsibilities as a grandmother. But who would have thought that Su Mingyan was obedient and sensible on the outside, but in fact, he had already accumulated monstrous hatred. She tried her best to get on a boat with the prince, then, he pushed all his blood relatives into the abyss. Today, it's a restart. I understand that Su Mingyan has long been rotten to the roots, and there is no way to save it. I didn't bother to look at her hypocritical face anymore. It was all for the sake of acting, so I patiently played with her. I said, my sister doesn't have to go to any other trouble to trick me. Since you like the prince, I will give it to you. It's just a man. There is only one point. You are a concubine, and the emperor and queen will not let you be a concubine for the crown prince. In my opinion, you work hard. Let's be a side concubine. Su Mingyan stared at me like a ghost, obviously still not convinced. Su Miao, don't you want to marry the crown prince? I took a deep breath and used the essence of acting skills I learned from her in my previous life, and returned them to her. If you and my sisters are disgusted because of the prince, then I would rather not marry. My eyes were red and I looked genuine. Su Mingyan froze in place for a long time before he pulled the corners of his mouth, like looking at a fool, and laughed sarcastically at me. Then I really have to thank my sister. It's better for my sister to send the Buddha to the west. So I will make a few more matchups and send me directly to the seat of the crown prince's side concubine. When I heard this, I was deliberately silent for a moment. Later, he pretended to be stung by her, and he forced his face, and barely held up a smile. Okay, Su Mingyan, I'll send you to the western sky, send you to hell. Since then, every time Prince Rongyu came to see me again, Su Mingyan would shamelessly lean aside. I didn't say anything. I deliberately indulged her in entanglement with the prince. Later, I simply didn't go out, and just nested in the boudoir to read. Anyway, Su Mingyan kept staring at the courtyard, and when the prince came, she would do everything she could to hook it. And Chun'er often stomped her feet in anger in the house. Miss, didn't you see that the second young lady's body was almost in the prince's arms? The second lady fed the prince pastries today, and she actually fed half of it herself. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince clearly said that he came to see you. Why do you stay with the second lady every time? I laugh, because he swayed from side to side, trying to eat his sister. After a few more days, Rongyu finally came to block my door. Meow meow, what's wrong with you? How long are you going to hide from me? His voice was gentle, but it was a little hurtful, as if I had done something terrible wrong and broken his heart. It's ridiculous. It's obviously an evil ghost, but it's dressed in the skin of a god and a Buddha. It's almost there. His good days are coming to an end. I took a beautiful posture and stepped back generously. The turmoil in the DPRK is a critical period. I thought, if I always pester your highness, I am afraid that outsiders will criticize your highness for delaying the love of children. Rong Yu's face suddenly stiffened when he heard me say this. For him, frequent visits to the Taifu mansion are themselves one of the means to seek the situation. He is weaving a web of tenderness in order to bind us to him. In fact, he has worked hard for several years to get along with us to such an extent that it is already a drop in the water, but I want to remind him, I'm going to panic him. Make him struggle, and admire the way he was caught off guard. Sure enough, his expression sank little by little, there seemed to be a crack in the gentle mask, and he smiled reluctantly. It's still wonderful, thoughtful, and lonely. His tone was tentative. I smiled and didn't say anything, and it was up to him to guess. After the prince left, Su Mingyan found me again. Obviously, she learned the news that the prince had come to me privately, so she rushed over to find out about me. These days, under my deliberate leniency, Su Mingyan has long been too lazy to disguise. In the past, she was gentle and obedient, open-minded, and did not envy the golden and white jade cups. Now, she is completely like a different person, arrogant and domineering, but if any of the subordinates did not say a word to her wishes, she raised her hand and beat her. Even the reprimands of her parents, she didn't pay much attention to them. It seems that she already regards herself as the future crown princess. The moment she pushed open the door to my room, I suddenly felt that the expression on her face was very familiar. It was a face full of jealousy and unsettled. It's the same as her aunt who died young. In the past years, she pretended to be so good. It was really difficult for her. Su Miao, I really admire your methods. You said that you gave me the prince, but now you hook the prince into your room. What did you just say to the prince? She lowered her voice, her tone full of rolling jealousy. I acted perfunctorily, looked at her playfully, and told the truth. He came and questioned me why I was hiding from him. I've always pushed him to you, and he's sad. Su Mingyan's expression sank instantly. No way, he obviously, halfway through her words, she suddenly choked. I'm going to push her. Yes, he obviously likes you. He lets you tease and laugh. But Su Mingyan, you haven't done enough. The ones you learn are the methods of low-class prostitutes. Hearing me call her like a prostitute. She jerked her head up and stared at me with a vicious look in her eyes, as if she wanted to tear me apart. However, she still wanted to listen to me continue to teach, so she could only endure it. Then what kind of means are clever? I propped my chin and said slowly, sneaking into the night with the wind, moisturizing things silently, is the most useless for a prince. What you want to give him should be a blockbuster. If it doesn't sound, if you can't be amazed, that's fine. Men can marry by force, and daughters can naturally marry by force. You just have to put an unshirkable responsibility on him on the most high-profile occasion. Su Mingyan sneered. Responsibility? You don't want me to drug him, do you? How is this different from a prostitute? Su Miao, do you think I'll fall for you? He is the crown prince. If I really do this, not only will I not succeed, but I will be executed. I couldn't help but scoff. There is another kind of responsibility. Have you forgotten what kind of kindness should be reciprocated? Su Mingyan's eyes immediately lit up, and he muttered in a trance, the grace of saving lives should be repaid with your body. I gently planted the seeds of desire in her heart. That's right. He is the crown prince. And his high power is eye-catching. There are inevitably times a year when you encounter danger. When it comes to the critical moment, whether you want to give it a go depends on your choice. Su Mingyan pondered for a moment, then raised his head again, and showed me that seemingly delicate but sarcastic smile. My sister is really the #1 talented woman in the capital, all kinds of paths, all proficient. Instead of being angry, I laughed, because if she can say that, it means the seed I planted for her began to take root. The autumn hunt is coming as scheduled. It is rare for the queen to accompany the emperor out of the palace. She changed into a hunting suit and talked with the emperor with a smile about hunting a few more wild animals today, and asked him to see and understand the skills of the tiger girl. The emperor did not shy away from revealing his respect for the queen. Well, I know that the queen is very capable, and I count on the queen's help for today's rations. When the ministers heard this, they laughed one after another. Only Prince Rongyu had a stiff smile on his lips. This is the most embarrassing situation he has been in all these years. The current queen is not the crown prince's biological mother, she is the successor, to be exact, and the crown prince is the son of the former queen. The queen mother is about 30 years old, born in Jiangmen, and has a prince under her knees, Nijing Wang. 12 years old this year, smart and calm. The emperor and the current queen have a deep affection. He, the crown prince, was caught in the middle of it and struggled step by step. and in order to keep his position in the East Palace, he had exhausted all his efforts. Slowly, he lost even his conscience. Through the flow of people, I looked at Qin Yen. He sat quietly in the midst of the hustle and bustle as before, his eyes cold. Merely, this time, he brought his sword, raising his eyes. Qin Yen met my gaze, and his lips were slightly hooked. As I passed by him, he snuck my little finger on it. I was worried that there would be too many people and mixed eyes that would affect the plan. So I quickly glared at him sideways and asked him to restrain himself. His face was cold and detached, but in fact he lowered his voice, as if deliberately flirting, and as if he was aggrieved and pleading. In the inner house library, the paintings have been piled up into a hill. When will Meow Meow go to have a look? My heart shuddered when I thought of those vivid images. This madman, at this time, he was still thinking about this kind of thing. I secretly counted the hour. Knowing that the assassins of the southern frontier were about to fall from the sky, I whispered a reminder to him. Don't get hurt. If you are injured, you will die. I've talked to him many times before. Maybe my eyes were too caring and serious. The corners of Qin Yan's lips floated into a seductive smile, presumptuously sticking to my ear. Earlier, I made a wonderful medicine. Today, I will be a wonderful sword. I haven't been able to be a wonderful Lang yet. How can you be willing to die? This crazy and ruthless wolf calf talks about love, as if he is playing a love trick on someone. It's just that I haven't had time to think deeply. The next moment, the sound of killing was surging like a tidal wave. The sword is shining and the hunting ground is in chaos. Those who shouted for help, those who ran in all directions, and those who stabbed with their lives. Qin Yin smiled at me in the overwhelming sound of killing. Well, according to the plan, hide and wait for me. With that, he drew his sword from its sheath and flew away to slew it. But my plan was not well hidden. This is the hunting ground I've been waiting for a long time. Hide, impossible. I returned to where I had been. My eyes swept around in the midst of the chaos. First Prince Romeu dash. As in the previous life, he seemed to be calmly defending against the enemy, but the corners of his mouth swept over a calculating smile. In his eyes, this group of assassins was the prey that he deliberately put in after a lot of calculations for him to step on. And then Su Mingyan dash. She sat right next to me. Su Mingyan was already stupid by this sudden fight, and subconsciously wanted to run. I calmly grabbed her and gave her a look. In an instant, she understood my eyes and stopped running. She turned her head to look at the prince. Her eyes showed a touch of eagerness, and she couldn't help but say out loud, "The grace of saving lives can be repaid with one's body." Saving grace, that's right, she remembered. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. I bowed my head in the dark, the corners of my lips hooked up in satisfaction. In this life, I am no longer her primary target. Under my temptation, the crown prince became her prey, and in my eyes, all of them have become a bleak part of heaven and earth. Only Qin Yen, the robe is fierce, like a Yama demon who climbed up from hell to ask for his life, and like a god who came down from the sky to redeem the world. The assassin's sword approached the emperor. At the last moment dash, a sword light flashed by. The assassin was killed by a throat. Qin Yen saved the life of the Son of Heaven. The Son of Heaven looked at him, and his voice was trembling for the rest of his life. Whose son are you? He stopped in front of the emperor with a faint expression, killing one person in one step, and where the edge passed, blood flew everywhere, like a flame, like a turtle, and he stood in the blood, slowly pronounced the name, low and cold. I'm Qin Yen. That moment, everyone looked at him in disbelief. No one dared to believe that the Qin family, who had been famous in the capital for more than 10 years, was so ruthless and resolute. Even Qin Yan's own father was dumbfounded. Everyone thinks that he is the dirt in the dark ditch. Anyone who doesn't like it can trample on him. They've long forgotten. Qin Yen should have been such a flamboyant and enthusiastic young man. Prince Romeu, who was not far away, was also staring blankly at this scene. In his plan, he should have been the one who went to rescue the driver. He was so shocked that he lost his mind. The sword has no eyes, and once it loses its mind, it becomes a flaw everywhere. Seeing that Qin Yen was guarding the emperor's side, the assassins couldn't kill him at all, so they turned their attention to the crown prince. Su Mingyan appeared at this time. "Prince, be careful," she exclaimed, and pounced forward with determination, blocking the prince with a sword. When he landed, he was covered in blood. The prince came back to his senses and looked at Su Mingyan, who fell into his arms incredulously, shocked again. "Why did you rush here?" I watched this scene from afar, and even wanted to laugh a little. No wonder the prince was surprised. It's really because he has been calculating people's hearts for many years, and Su Mingyan is about a chess piece that can be teased at will in his eyes, her greed. I'm afraid that the prince has already seen through it. Even if the prince thought that he would die, he couldn't imagine that Su Mingyan would block the sword for him. Su Mingyan's calculations were quite exquisite, and I could see clearly that the knife seemed to be deeply pierced, but it actually didn't hurt anything. It's a pity that what she doesn't know is that the sword is poisonous. She seems to be alive, but she is no different from dead. Ridiculously, she doesn't know yet. Su Mingyan's face was distorted in pain. And he didn't forget to seize the opportunity to confess his feelings. Brother Prince, I have been pleased with you for many years, blocking the sword for you, and dying without regrets. The prince's face was as dark as if he had seen a ghost. It's just at this time, there were shouts from the crowd. The prince is in trouble, come and escort, help. The cries are getting louder and louder. More and more people went to protect the crown prince. And there are fewer and fewer people around the emperor. The emperor's face became more and more ugly. I hooked the corners of my mouth. The prince has secretly formed a party over the years. It's not a good thing to be too loud. At the critical moment when lives are at stake, when people are nervous, they only need someone to take the lead and shout, and the effect can be achieved. Everything was as expected, and I'm still waiting for someone. I closed my eyes and finally heard the sound of breaking wind behind my ears. He's coming. I'm waiting for the person in my previous life who intended to kill me. It was he who injured Qin Yan, and finally caused Qin Yan to linger on the sickbed and die young. He's right behind me. I heard him draw his sword. It's here. I had been preparing for a long time and suddenly turned around, with the dagger hidden in his sleeve. He slashed his throat fiercely. My skills are all taught by Qin Yan. He was so sick that he would be so tired that he would have lost his face to say 2 more words, but he still said to me over and over again, meow meow. When you kill someone, you must aim at the key point, and there must be no hesitation. Hot blood spurted from the assassin's neck, staining my dress and splashing my face. He raised his sword aloft, his eyes split. In the bloodlight, I playfully hooked the corners of my lips. Why? I put up with it and didn't help him. That's because I'm waiting to kill you with my own hands. The assassin was still staring at me in disbelief as he fell, and I, stepping on his corpse, walked towards Qin Yan. At this very moment I saw again that someone was stabbing Qin Yan in the back. My face sank, and I quickly shot out 2 leaves. The leaf blinded the man's eyes. Qin Yan looked back and looked at me meaningfully. Then he looked at the 2 blood-stained autumn leaves on the ground. I said, picking leaves and flying flowers. It was the trick I sneered at him in my previous life, made him so angry that he vomited blood, and refused to learn it. It was he who later threatened me that if I couldn't learn, I would have to wait for him to bathe. The trick, picking leaves and flying flowers. His eyebrows and eyes raised slightly, and while continuing to kill, he curled his lips and smiled lightly. You've practiced well, but master, I curled the corners of my lips, taught by my sweetheart. Qin Yan's eyes instantly erupted with irrepressible jealousy. Sweetheart, huh? It seemed like the next second, he was going to take the head of my sweetheart. I had to be honest and reassure. I learned it from you. In my dreams, Qin Yan, I laughed. So, you are my master, and my sweetheart. I am the daughter of Taifufu, the first talented woman in the capital, and the model of the noble daughter of the family. I am dignified and gentle, and I smile without showing my teeth. I should have retired from the ranks of the family and shivered with the women, but I stood by Qin Yan's side and escorted the emperor and queen with him. His sword qi is everywhere, and people die like numbness. I drew my bow and arrows, and fired 3 arrows at once. Everyone looked at me and him dumbfounded. They were born sheltered under the aura of the world. Among them, there are many gentlemen who bullied Qin Yan when they were young, but at this moment But they only dared to huddle behind me and Qin Yan. They became cowardly rats, dirty mud. When the battle ended, I stood side by side with Qin Yan and looked at the blood in front of me lightly. Qin Yan asked in a low voice, meow meow girl, can you use my knife? I curled my lips and nodded. It's good. Qin Yan smiled. His face, which was as cold as jade and snow, was splashed with the blood of the dead, and it also set off the bewitching aura between his eyebrows and eyes. It's good if you're satisfied. Of course I'm satisfied. The assassin is dead. Su Mingyan was poisoned and would also die. As for Prince Rongyu, after this battle, it will become a grasshopper after the autumn, and it will not live long. The people who hurt him in his previous life have all been calculated by me, and as of this moment, there is only one left, that's me. So I asked him, Qin Yan, if there is a person, you have been so good to her, almost digging out your heart and liver for her, but she never believes you, and finally makes you regret it. The next time you meet again, will you hate her, and how do you want her to repay you? He was wiping the blood from the tip of his sword. And when he heard what I said, he stood in the pile of corpses, and looked at me. I can't afford to be early. If she is good to someone, it must be because she has been better to me before. If I dare to dig out my heart and cut my liver and give her my life, she must have given me something more important than my life first. If she didn't believe me, I probably did something wrong to cause her to misunderstand. In that case, what do I hate her for, and what does she have to repay? If there is reincarnation, I will only try to hold her by my side, and when she gets better, let her believe in me once. My head is buzzing, tears burst into the eyes, his face sank. And he stepped forward to ask me with a tone of panic that he had never seen before, crying for what, where did it hurt? But I no longer cared about the occasion, and threw myself into his arms. Qin Yan, you are really sick, not just a madman, he's a fool. He froze, and even the sword in his hand fell to the ground. After a long pause, he slowly hooked the corners of his lips, and sighed in a low voice, full of restraint, meow meow. If you don't let go, I can't help it. After the Autumn Hunt assassination, someone accused the prince of knowing the assassin's plan in advance, but concealed it and did not report it, which is punishable. Some people accused the prince of forming a party for personal gain and plotting against him. Wave after wave of evidence came in. Naturally, these were all the handiwork of Qin Yan's madman. In a fit of rage, the emperor deposed Rongyu as the crown prince and threw him into prison. An autumn hunt, let Rongyu plan for many years, and it will be ruined, also made Qin Yan rise to the top and became a new upstart favorite of the imperial court, and I have reaped countless rewards. My parents in Asu were amazed at how different my nature was from the usual ones when I was hunting in the autumn. They asked me when I had learned archery. I came up with a reason. Even if they don't believe it, they don't care, the father said. I've worked hard for you all these years. But I blame the inner house for being too small, and the talented lady is too famous, so you have to restrain your nature, Asu said. Eldest sister, when you shot arrows, you dumbfounded me. If you were born in another family and were not my eldest sister, I would have carried you in a sedan chair to marry you as a daughter-in-law. After hearing this, his father slapped Aksu directly on the back of his head. There are no rules. How can you talk to your eldest sister? Let outsiders hear the joke. Mother smiled softly and warmly beside her. It's rare. The house is finally no longer jumping. Before this, my father and I led people to search for evidence that Su Mingyan drugged his mother. Father was so angry. He had always been the most decent person, but he scolded Su Mingyan fiercely for 4 or 5 hours, and scolded him until his mouth was dry and dizzy, and he finally took a breath. Su Mingyan didn't have Qin Yan's ability, and after being hit by a sword, he had already been poisoned into his viscera. She lay on the bed, listening to her father's scolding, but her face was smiling madly. She was full of foul language and scolded her father for being an old mongrel. She even fantasizes that she is about to become the crown princess, and in the future, she will cure the sins of our whole family and let our whole family go to her aunt's funeral. She was sick and in a trance. She had no idea that the court had changed dramatically. I didn't know that I couldn't survive for a few days. Soon, she swallowed, listening to his mother. On the night of Su Mingyan's death, his father cried bitterly again. He frequently reflected on his teaching to his children and was also conscientious. How could he raise a disloyal and unfilial white-eyed wolf like Su Mingyan? But everything in this world is indescribable. Some evils cannot be resolved by kindness, just like when Prince Rongyu committed suicide in the prison. He didn't forget to leave a blood letter. The blood letter was written into his frightening difficulties in the East Palace, but there was no mention of the souls who died at his hands. He has no remorse for the dead at all. In fact, in the last life, the crown prince did not win. That year, Qin Yan saved me, and at the same time, he secretly saved my relatives. My father united the forces of Qin Yan's faction again, because he was too secretive and dangerous. My father and Qin Yan hid it from me. In the end, Qin Yan overthrew the crown prince. It's just that he himself has fallen. It's been a long time. I remembered in a trance that the first time Rongyu went out of the palace in microclothes, when he saw the beggar begging on the street, his eyes were full of disbelief. the little prince, clasping his hands into fists, said to me with red eyes, "Meow meow, when I become the emperor in the future, I must make this world no more starvation death, no more frozen bones." At that time, the green plum cardamom, the youth was gentle, he also treated people with sincerity, and he also had a glorious time. I don't know when, the boy was gone, he never came back until he died. The Mid-Autumn Festival Palace banquet was not delayed because of the assassination of the hunting ground and the defeat of the prince. I was invited to the palace, and Qin Yan was also in the palace. He and I are now the most favored descendants of the emperor and queen. The singing and dancing of the palace banquet whitewashed the peace after the bloodshed. The emperor and queen sat on a high seat. The emperor asked me with a loving expression, "Su Miao, Qin Yan, apart from those previous rewards, what else do you want? Whatever you want, just ask." I glanced at Qin Yan and Qin Yan's complexion was already outstanding, but now he was wearing a scarlet robe, which set off his cold eyebrows and eyes like a picture and a demon, which was fascinating. He got up and replied, meaningfully, "Minister, I want to get married." There was a moment of silence above the hall, and soon there was laughter. Qin Yan secretly glanced at me in this piece of Shang flute. The emperor couldn't help but laugh when he heard it. The emperor turned to me again and asked, "What about Meow Meow? What do you want?" I lowered my eyebrows and smiled, "Courtier, I want to get married." That night, the decree was given, during the Mid-Autumn Festival. The Son of Heaven gave marriage, Qin and Su got married, and they chose a day to marry. Half a year later, Qin Yan opened another mansion, married me, and covered the entire capital with red makeup. On the night of the cave room, he took me to see the vivid picture scroll in the room. The girl in the volume is lifelike, and she smiles and smiles are all me. Just looking at it, I suddenly noticed something strange. One of them depicts me in my wedding dress. The wedding dress in the painting was not as luxurious as it is today, and the expression on my face in the painting is also full of sadness. I recognized it, that was the wedding dress I wore in my last life for Qin Yancheng. But he was no longer alive at that time, he had never seen me dress him in a wedding dress. "Qin Yan, where did you come from this scene in the painting?" I asked him with red eyes and a trembling voice. His eyes overflowed with an almost paranoid affection, but his tone was cautious. "This one was painted a few days ago." That day, I suddenly fell into a nightmare. In my dream, I can't remember what happened before. I only saw that you finally married me, but I died early. No matter how you cry and call me, I can't give you a response. Later, I saw you in my coffin in your wedding dress, and said that I was afraid that my Huangquan road would be cold, so I set a fire, but you slept with me in that fire, and didn't go out. When I woke up from a nightmare, my heart ached. It wasn't until I painted this one that I was relieved. I nestled in his arms, and my eyes were getting redder. Qin Yan pinched my crying face and laughed presumptuously. "Stupid or not, the nightmares are all reversed, sweet dreams are real." He bit my ear and lip, carried me into the bed, and whispered my name between his lips, "Conscienceless little raccoon slave, you really made me wait." With that, he lowered his head and dropped a fine kiss. "Qin Yan, you were born at the wrong time. I didn't love anyone. Now, all beings in the world are charming. Spring rain in the south of the Yangtze River, sunset over the Long River, I've seen them all, none of them are as good as you." End of full text.